There are certain meals I keep coming back to, and it's not just because they taste good. Sometimes it's the comfort of them. Sometimes it's the memory attached to them, and sometimes it's the feeling of knowing what the meal means to you before you even take the first bite. And while I was playing Dosa Divas, I kept thinking about that because this isn't just a game with food in it. It's not just using food as an aesthetic or flavor on top. Dosa Divas feels like a game that understands food as memory, culture, care, tension, family, and identity. Food is kind of the language of the whole experience, and I really resonated with what it was trying to tell me with that message. The more I sat with the game, the more I realized the best way for me to talk about it was like it was talking about a meal. What flavors stood out, what textures worked, what didn't work, what were all the ingredients that come together, was there something missing, was there something added that shouldn't have been? Maybe most importantly, could I taste a version of this meal that could have gone even further? Because that's really where I landed with Dosa Divas. This is a lot about this game that I really admired. The flavor of it, the heart of it, the perspective behind it. But there were also parts of the experience where I kept feeling a potential more than the full payoff. And I want to start with the part that worked for me, which is the flavor of the game. Before I even get to the combat or cooking or progression of any of it, what really put me in was just how lived in this world felt. The family dynamics, the way the people talk to each other, the cultural specificity, the warmth, the friction, the care that can sit right next to annoyance or distance. That stuff really landed with me. As someone who comes from my own cultural background, there was a lot of little moments in Dosa Divas that felt instantly familiar to me in my own way. Not because the game was being broad, but because it was being very specific. The way people communicate, the way expectations sit under conversations, the way food means more than just food. That all felt very observed and very told from a perspective that understood it. I really appreciate that because a lot of games can gesture towards culture in a very surface level kind of way. I get the look of it, maybe the broader shape of it, but not always the living in feeling underneath. And Dosa Divas, for me, felt much more personal than that. It feels like a game made by people putting together something of themselves into it, just like a really good dish. It's like, that isn't just a sandwich. That's a sandwich that came from love or from care, from your mother, from someone who is coming to care, or soup that came while you're sick and it came from someone who's just watching, caring over you, some loved one or family or friend, from something of a celebratory type of event or something like that in your life. And that matters because it gives the game a flavor that feels real. It feels like it came from somewhere. That made me want to keep sitting with it. And then you get to the texture of the game, meaning how it actually feels to play. That's where things get a little bit more mixed. I think the combat is fun. It reminds me, and it's reminiscent of like Paper Mario, Octopath, Sea of Stars, Super Mario RPG. And I had a good time with it. It was very reminiscent of that. It was inspired by it in all the great ways. And it did something new with it in its own way by adding all their own flavor palettes as weaknesses and such. And that rhythm, that personality, it's an active enough that it doesn't just feel like you're mindlessly clicking through turns. On a basic level, I really enjoyed engaging with what it was setting down as the framework for combat. But when it starts introducing RPG elements, that deeper RPG side of it felt more like it was there for show than something I really felt changing the experience or asking me to engage with it in a meaningful way. When you level up, for instance, your characters, the two sisters and their mech diva, are able to put points into spirit, health, and physical ability. And things like that make you feel like, okay, these points matter. Putting your points in depending stats are going to affect something. How you play, how you build, such and such. But it never really felt like I was shaping a build or strongly pushing my playstyle in any one direction versus another. I kept waiting for that RPG system to go harder, to commit more, to give me a stronger sense that my choices were changing how I approach combat. And it never felt like it fully was happening. It was like always on the cusp. And that potential was there, like making me think of what would this game have been like had it seen that RPG potential more? That now that it's kind of given me a little bit of a flavor of it. Like, for instance, what if instead of stat points, you just went gear focused and you had spatulas and different kitchen utensils and turning them into different types of equipment. So what if you have the gold spatula or the silver spatula, or this spatula that's really good at making a certain way meals a certain spice or flavor, versus other ones that maybe do a different thing altogether. Or pots and pans that you can hit off your hip the way the sisters do, but different. A heavier pot goes slower but does more damage. A lighter pot is faster, doing a lot more frequent damage but smaller. What if these things change playstyle in just some more dramatic way? And that's the RPG system leaning harder into what the cooking identity could have been. What if that customization was a bigger impact on the feel of the combat? And then there's the why you even want to do the combat. You would want to engage in an RPG and grind enemies and corpos from LenaWorks in a way to get points or to increase your chances to do any of these things. But I was never really incentivized to want to do that because I knew that it was just going to kind of end up not changing my playstyle one way or the other. So that kind of feedback loop just never didn't feel like it was fully clicking for me. And that's what I kept bumping into with Dosa Divas. Not that the systems themselves were bad, but how they were ripe with possibility was more glaring in a lot of ways. There's a groundwork there that I was really excited about, and I could see again on the cusp of, but it just didn't push it far enough. And then the cooking is where I think that tension hit strongest. Story-wise and thematically, I think it's great. Like, it showed this weird, you're clunky at first, but you start to understand these mini games because it's a little bit of a harmony between these two sisters who've been apart for so long. And that totally makes sense for the game. It belongs there. It helps tie the food with the family and care and the collaboration in a way that feels smart and intentional. But I wanted to like the cooking mini games a little bit more. It felt like a few basic things, but I didn't actively feel like I was enjoying each game is like a fun little mini game that I want to engage with over and over and over again. I didn't want to keep making dishes because that part of it was fun. I was doing it because I needed to do it for a quest loop. And then in order to even be able to do it, you need the ingredients, which was okay at first, but as I needed more specific ones for quest progression or story progression, it felt like I kept missing one or two key ingredients that were very limited in their availability. And finding them or searching and waiting for them to loop back and over again, it's just started to create more friction in the way that isn't fun. And so that back and forth of not wanting to do cooking as often and then not wanting to search for these hard to find ingredients made it a little bit harder to embrace that side of the game beyond what the story was asking. Instead of making me want to engage with it more, it honestly made me want to do a little bit less. That's a bit of a bummer because on paper, that should be one of my favorite parts of the game. And it's a really good example of the overall feeling I had with Dosa Divas. I could see the meal it wanted to serve, and I liked a lot of what it was putting on the plate. But there are parts of it I wished it put a little bit further emphasis or seasoning or paprika or something on to further pop the flavors of those ideas more, besides just being good groundwork. That also affected the combat, like I said, the way in which you're incentivized to grind battles. Those two key things were really points of friction for me in ways I thought could be improved. Now, one positive I will say is that once at least for the combat, is that once that became a little bit more of a friction, the accessibility options did a lot to help. I appreciated that because it made that shift in how I was playing more manageable. So even when I was no longer super motivated to engage with the battles, every part of the loop, the game gave me some flexibility to keep moving in a way that it was respectful of my time. And I do want to give it credit for that. Not every game is cognizant of what accessibility features people do need or want. Because the thing is, I don't walk away from Dosa Divas feeling disappointed. It's in what it is. I very much appreciate what it's trying to be, what it is, the story it tells. I walk away with a feeling that I see a version of it that it does it stronger, and it's almost like a parent with his kids. Like I can see you doing in the right direction, but do it more. And I want to cultivate that. And I hope this studio, having spoken with the creative director about this, they've had a track record of growing and growing and growing. They've done Falcon Age, they've done Thirsty Suitors, now they've done this. I very much, instead of them doing a new idea, I'd love to see them stay in this world and fully realize a lot more of these ideas and get to know it and get more accustomed to it and the rhythms of it, the same way our two main characters get accustomed to cooking together again. I feel like they're harmonizing in a way that you can see game to game. I hope they take that feedback with most sincerity that I want to bring it. Because the more that I really liked what this meal was trying to be, I could taste kind of that potential. And honestly, that's a pretty interesting place to land with this game, I would say. Like, I think it makes for fun conversation. I think it makes for a ripe kind of discussion of what you enjoyed, what you didn't, and where you could see it be better. And that to me is like the best spot to be in, because it feels like it's, hey, we made an experience, we made a game, and we can iterate on it. That's what I love about the gaming space, is when a studio takes that feedback and is able to build off those ideas. So even with these criticisms that I've shared and the things that I loved about it, what stayed with me was that flavor, that perspective, the heart, the cultural nuances, the feeling that this game came from somewhere real. I really resonated with where the game ends and closes with. I think they told a very strong story and a message, and in a way that felt real. Like, a lot of times games will, the dialogue doesn't hit. It just like this, it falls campy, and it just felt like these characters were talking in a way and engaging in conversations that I was like, I've been there. I know that kind of back and forth, that conflict. I know that misunderstanding, and that's what's memorable to me. The Maybe that's like the cleanest way to put it, I guess. Dosa Divas is very much like a meal that's made with care, but one where I could taste a version that was bolder. And honestly, I still feel like that's a meal worth sitting down for. I feel like I was welcome to a table, and I was enjoying a well-crafted meal that was done with love and care, and flavors that I've never tried before, and tried in ways that I've never experienced before. I think that's such a personal place to come from for a game, an indie game or any game, and I respect it for that. So I very much relish this experience that I had with Dosa Divas, and I'm really excited to see where this studio goes next. But I'm very curious, where have you played Dosa Divas, and if so, what did you think of it? Please let me know in the comments and everything. And as always, I appreciate the time you give me for conversations like this. I think games have a way of connecting in a way that other mediums don't, and I think this game is a perfect example of that. So until next time, I'll catch you on the next save point.